Hello, and welcome to Folklore Feature. Today we're reading a story called The Old Ones. It's about an ancient Indian legend of a more advanced and taller group of Indians than were originally in eastern Kentucky, allegedly. I'll read the story for you and do a quick little breakdown afterwards. So, let's dive right into it. The Old Ones. When the first white pioneers moved into eastern Kentucky, the few Indians left in the area told a story of ghosts and campfires seen in a particular field. These apparitions are referred to in early Indian legends and are called the Old Ones. The legends say drums and singing can be heard, but never refer to an apparition speaking. Many people have witnessed the phenomenon, both day and night. In the center of this field is a perfect circle about 40 feet in diameter. The path of the circle is about a foot wide, and although nothing will grow in this path, a strange type of grass does grow within the circle. Transplants of other grasses and weeds have been tried within the circle, but they all died in a short time. The area has been examined by agricultural experts, but they have no explanation. Several times a year, 7 campfires can be seen from a distance, burning within the circle or around the edges. There have been instances when people unfamiliar with local lore thought the grass was actually burning. Many have gone out to investigate, but the fires always disappear, and when approached, there is no sign of any fire having been started. During a heavy rainfall, the field becomes soaked, but apparently, no rain ever falls within the circle. The air on the field is always several degrees cooler than the temperature surrounding the field. This holds true even on the hottest days. There is no perceptible breeze or wind as one steps into the field. Only a feeling similar to entering a cooled room. Birds do not build nests here, and no wild animal has ever been seen in or near this field. When dogs are led by a leash to the area, they cringe in terror and try to break away. Many years ago, when the field was plowed for crops, 2 men were needed, one to handle the plow, while another held the horses' heads to keep them from breaking away. Strange items of flint and metal, axes, knives, and other tools that appear new have been found in this field as recently as 1980. In 1900, a 60-pound granite war axe, a pair of moccasins, and a knife of tremendous size were found. The items were so huge that the person who could use them would likely have been nearly 12 feet tall. The spectral visitors left behind other things unknown to the Indians of 1750. Items found include metallic bow and arrows, bags, moccasins, and wide belts of leather. The designs and needlework show a knowledge of leather far more sophisticated than the Indians that the pioneers met in the 1770s. There are no recorded cases of these ghostly visitors harming anyone. In fact, they've helped several people. An entire family was saved in 1835 by the ghostly visitors. 7 members of the family had contracted the dreaded killer, cholera. One day, an Indian squaw appeared at the family's home. She motioned to one of the young men who had not yet come down with the disease, indicating that he should follow her. She led him to the woods near the house, where she pointed out several plants and urged him to dig the roots up. He gathered the roots that the squaw had pointed out and followed her back to the house. She indicated that he was to boil the roots. After they had boiled sufficiently, she mixed a tea-like drink with a white, powdery substance she took from her leather pouch, which she carried around her waist. After giving a cup of the mixture to each sick member of the family, she smiled, waved farewell, and left. She had never spoken a word in the presence of anyone in the family. Every sick family member recovered, and they never saw the Indian squaw again or learned the secret of the medication. Edward Clemens was saved by the ghostly visitors late one night in 1925. He was riding his horse within a few hundred yards of the field when the horse bolted at the sight of the campfires and ran. Clemens explained later that he had lost control of the horse and probably would have been killed, except that a huge Indian ran from the field, grabbed the horse's head, and wrestled it to the ground. As he held it there, the Indian touched the horse's eyes, and the horse immediately calmed. The Indian picked Clemens up like a child, set him back on the horse, and with a wave, disappeared back toward the campfires. In 1939, 12-year-old Stephen Collins was swimming alone in the river about a mile from the field when cramps seized him up. Because of the distance, his cries for help could not be heard by his family. Recounting the near tragedy later, Stephen said that he was almost unconscious when a tall Indian came from nowhere, waded into the river, picked him up, carried him to shore, and set him back down. The Indian then waved his hand and walked away. There was an older woman who lived alone within 2 miles of this field. Although there were no deer in the area, she would serve venison to her visitors. When asked where she had obtained it, she swore that 2 large Indians left the fresh meat on her porch several times a year. In 1949, John Bowman, present owner of the farm, dug into 3 Indian graves near the site where the ghosts were seen. He removed large numbers of artifacts, some of flint, others of metal. He found axes, knives, tools, and what were thought to be religious totems. Many of these items were beautiful works of art. Bowman, an intelligent man, was not given to superstitions. He says that on the 3rd night after taking the artifacts from the graves, he and his family could hear a loud, weird moaning sound all around their house. This went on for 3 sleepless nights. On the 4th night, Bowman and his family were sitting on their porch when a large Indian, dressed in buckskins, came into the yard. Bowman owned several large, vicious dogs that began to bark and run to attack the Indian. The Indian waved his hand, and the dogs turned and ran, yelping in fear. They did not return home for several days. The Indian never spoke. He pointed to Bowman, then he pointed in the direction of the graves, held up 3 fingers, and clapped his hands together 1 time. As quickly as he had appeared, he turned and started walking towards the field, where he then disappeared into the night. The incident was witnessed by the entire family. Bowman immediately reburied the artifacts, and they remained buried until today. The moaning sound that had kept the family awake for 3 nights stopped, and has never been heard again. The graves are guarded against further disturbance. The campfires can still be seen several times a year. There are times when ghostly figures can be seen moving about the circle, and at other times, only the fires burn. Okay, first things first, I apologize. I have a little allergy thing going on right now. I always get it in the fall, so I'm a little stuffed up and a little hazy, but so for this story, again, we touch upon giants, this time Native American giants, and the hint of at one time them having a more advanced civilization than they had when the white people reached America. This is a very common theme in a lot of these stories I've been reading of folklore, and it's definitely seems to fascinate a lot of people. The idea that we have fallen somehow throughout history from what we once knew, and maybe only recently have reached those levels, or maybe not even have reached those levels. Atlantis comes to mind. That's the most popular one. I can tell you from my background as a Christian that the creationist theory of history involves a lot of more advanced civilizations that fell during the flood. And there's a lot of other religions, too, that have civilization being more advanced before some cataclysm happened. So I personally love the giant aspect, too. There is actually a theory on that as well. I'm not going to delve into it too much, but creationists do account for why there's so many stories of giants. It's a pretty deep one. It involves something to do with the air quality, a greenhouse effect almost. Not greenhouse gas, but a greenhouse effect. Maybe someday I'll do a video on that one. That'd be kind of cool. That's not the same as folklore, but it does tie into tales from our past, I suppose. So yeah, thank you for listening this far if you have. I apologize that it's been longer for an upload. I had a lot going on in real life. And yeah, if you're not and you've listened this long and you enjoy it, please subscribe and we'll see what else I can crank out here. This is Hopeful American signing off.